Welcome back to episode 4 of using a guided sharpening system, and today we're going to take a quick look at angles. If you're using a guided sharpening system, or if you're thinking about using a guided sharpening system, understanding the geometry of your knife and being able to maintain the correct angle through the entire sharpening is the most important thing that you need to do in order to achieve that sharp edge. In this video, we're going to be talking about the pivot shaft, an angle cube, and a drill stop collar, and how each one of those plays a vital role in maintaining that angle throughout the entire sharpening. So let's see if we can oversimplify what seems to be a very confusing topic for a lot of new sharpeners. And every knife is going to have either one slanted angle or two slanted angles for its main cutting surface. That's going to be called the bevel. If you have one slanted angle, that's called a single bevel. If you have two slanted angles, that's called a double bevel. Generally, when you have two slanted angles, each one of those angles is going to have its own unit of measure. In this case, 17 degrees to the left, 17 degrees to the right. It's also commonly known as 34 degrees inclusive. So if you ever hear a 34-degree inclusive bevel, that means it's 17 and 17. So now that we know what a bevel is, we're going to go ahead and look at what a knife's cutting surface looks like. And the cutting surface is literally going to be the slants on either side of that particular blade. To keep things simple, my particular cutting surface is literally two angles. But there are some cutting surfaces that have micro bevels, and in another episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about micro bevels. So now that we've established what a bevel is and what a cutting surface is, let's talk about the geometry as it affects your knife's edge. What we want to look at is we want to look at a right angle. A right angle is 90 degrees. We're all familiar with that. If you cut a right angle right down the middle, so if I draw a line from that point all the way out, I split that 90-degree angle in half. I get two angles that are 45 degrees. If I split that angle down the middle again, I cut that in half, and I get two angles that are 22.5 degrees. We're going to use 22.5 as a benchmark, and here in a minute, I'm going to talk about what happens when you go lower than 22.5 and what happens when you go higher than 22.5. If you have an angle greater than 90 degrees, that's called an obtuse angle. So in the world of sharpening, you might hear people talk about putting an obtuse angle on their blade. That's actually incorrect, because I can guarantee you nobody's putting a 130 or 140 or 150 degree angle on their knife's edge. What they generally mean is that they're sharpening at a wide angle rather than a narrow angle. Okay, let's look at the most common angles that people typically sharpen at, and we can go over each one of them so that we can get a better understanding as to which one works for you. The thing about angles is that there's really no right answer. Every knife is going to be different depending on its use, depending on the metal that's used to build it. And so let's look at the first one, less than 10 degrees. And, I may have gotten the less and greater signs backwards, but don't let that distract you. The less than 10 degree sharpening angle is going to be for things like straight razors. It's a very, very delicate edge. It does not have a lot of edge retention, but it is incredibly sharp, less than 10 degrees. Greater than 30 degrees are going to be things like axes, machetes, incredibly durable, but not very sharp. What falls in the middle are going to be things like kitchen knives, EDCs, pocket knives, folding knives, sushi knives. So depending on what their uses are, 10 to 17 are going to be knives that are going to be used for slicing. 17 to 22 are going to be knives that are used for chopping. 22 to 30 are knives that are going to be used to cut more aggressive materials. Now, hopefully by now you've made the connection that there is a direct correlation between the angle of your knife and the edge retention. So the lower your angle, the more fragile your blade is going to be. The higher your angle, the more durable. Every sharpener has their own opinion as to which angle is better for which knife, but at the end of the day, this is something that you're going to have to figure out. Understanding what the knife is going to be used for and also understanding the metal that is used in the knife will help you in this decision-making process. And although there is no magic angle that's perfect for everything, the general consensus is that 20 degrees gives you both durability and sharpness. All right, let's find the angle. So the first, probably the easiest way to find the angle of your knife is by using the Sharpie method. And this is literally just coloring the bevel of your knife with the Sharpie and then laying it flat on your guided sharpening system's table, ensuring that the spine of the knife rests firmly against the guide clip. And once you do that, you're going to go ahead and pass your coarse stone over the bevel of the knife. Now, what you're going to start to see is you're going to start to see that Sharpie slowly erase. And what you're looking for areas that the Sharpie is still visible. For me, the Sharpie is visible at the very bottom of the bevel. Now, if it's visible at the bottom of the bevel, that means that I need to raise my angle. If it's visible at the top of the bevel, I need to lower my angle. After doing it for a while, you'll get much better at it and you'll be able to quickly find the angle with no problem. Now, when you're looking at the pivot shaft, on this shaft, you have colored markings. Each one of those represents a different angle. That first one is 13, and then it goes in 2-degree increments. 15, 17, that's 19, 21, 23, and 25. The unit that I'm using is an Edge Pro Professional. Same thing goes with the Edge Pro Apex. Each line is going to be denoted by a particular angle. You do need to note one thing when it comes to guided sharpening systems and predetermined angles is to not get too hung up on the accuracy. Think about these lines as more of recommendations, and let me tell you why. When it comes to angles and sharpening, a lot of factors play in. The position of the arm, the thickness of the knife, the way that you're holding the blade. And so if you look at these lines as more of recommendations, it's going to get you in the general ballpark figure. And when it comes to sharpening with a guided sharpening system, consistency is better than precision. And so to reiterate that, it's more important to be consistent than it is to be precise. But for the sake of argument, we're going to put an angle cube on this particular knife to see how the Edge Pro measures out. And right now it's measuring out at 17.05. which is really close to the recommendation of that 17-degree marker. And the reason being is because my knife is not very thick. If the spine of the knife was thicker, that angle would definitely read a little lower. Now, let's look at an angle cube. I'm going to take a moment and pause this video so that we could talk a little bit more about something that I think you might want to be aware of. This particular series is all about keeping it simple, and we want to go through the theory of sharpening in layman's terms so that everybody can understand. Unfortunately, when it comes to angles, it's not that simple. You see, the angle is determined by many, many factors. You have a basic triangle, your table and your stone rod, and then you have another triangle, that's your knife, and whether it sits on the face or whether it sits on the back will completely determine the angle, and also how thick your spine is. So I think here's what we're going to do. For the sake of keeping it simple, we're going to go through the angle cube, we're going to find our angle, and then I'll show you how to set the angle using the angle cube. At that point, you'll be ready to sharpen with no problems. In a later episode of how to use your guided sharpening system, the advanced curriculum will cover things like how to find a true angle and other advanced sharpening techniques. So let's continue with the angle cube. Okay, the angle cube is a tool that we use to find the angle of our stone arm. And basically, you zero it out on the table, and then you're going to rest it somewhere on the Edge Pro. Generally, the front is a good place, but it is a little wobbly. This place back here behind the thumb screws proves to be a little more stable and gives a better and more accurate reading. You're going to want to put whatever you're going to be sharpening underneath your stone arm and read the angle. With your left hand, hold your knife and your stone arm firmly in place, and with your right hand, unscrew the pivot shaft and raise or lower your bar until you get the desired angle. Tighten it back up, and you're in business, and you're ready to sharpen. Isn't that simple? So far, we've looked at 3 ways to determine the angle: a Sharpie, the predetermined lines on that pivot shaft, and the angle cube. And so now we need to be aware of a particular situation that's going to come up that will influence the angle of your sharpening. If you start with, let's say, a diamond plate, you work through some choceras, you hit that diamond matrix, and then you finish with a kangaroo strop, this is the issue that you're going to deal with. Look at the thickness between each one of these stones. The difference between the diamond, the troceras, the diamond matrix, and the strop is enough to cause a 1-degree variance up or down through your sharpening. Now, some may say, who cares? Me particularly, I care. And so I want to keep that perfect angle throughout the entire sharpening so that I'm not having to redo the work that I've done before. So what's the answer to this particular problem? Let me show you. It's called a drill stop collar. The drill stop collar is an incredible aftermarket part that you can buy for your Edge Pro Professional, for your Edge Pro Apex. There's other guided sharpening systems that could use this as well. And what this does is that it accounts for the thickness of your stone. This thing is an absolute marvel when it comes to sharpening. And let me show you the one that I use. The one that I use is from Rudlin. As you can see, it's a quick release drill stop collar. It's very easy to put on. I put it on before the sharpening begins. When the clamp is open, it's very easy to move around. And then all I got to do to close it is just gently press. All of a sudden it's locked into place. The very first stone that I use, now I'm going to be doing this on the first stone. My angle is already set to the sharpening angle of the knife. And what I want to do is I want to find a flat surface to rest that stone on. I want to make sure that it's completely flat. I'm going to press that drill stop collar all the way up against the stone and tighten it up. And then I'm going to pull that stone out. Now the next stone and every stone after that, I'm going to adjust the pivot shaft. I'm going to put the stone under the drill stop collar to where it lays flush against the table, retighten the pivot shaft, and what it's doing is it's taking into account the thickness of each one of the stones. So it doesn't matter how thick or how thin, you're going to have the exact angle every single time. I'm going to leave a link for the drill stop collar that you see in this video, but I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it is not a cheap product. That is a premium drill stop collar. There are cheaper options out there, but you definitely get what you pay for. And something that you need to know is that in order for the drill stop collar to work, your stones need to be properly leveled. And so they can't be dished in any way, otherwise you're not going to get an accurate reading. Okay, thanks for joining me on this overview of angles. Hopefully we were able to make a complicated subject super simple. The only things you really need to know is what are you going to be using your knife for? And once you determine that, you can determine which angle you're going to sharpen it at, and then how you're going to maintain that angle throughout the entire session, which is the most important part of sharpening. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe. We've got episode 5 already lined up and almost complete, so be sure to stick around for that. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you got anything out of this video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to share, and we'll see you in the next episode.